final workshop.
One thing we're teaching is teaching people to live above their demons. Now, this is what the shamans do. We live above the demons. Now, a yoga teacher these days is a yoga teacher, an exercise teacher, a friend, a doctor. You know, people come to us with all problems. Some are very serious.
Holistic.
Many suicidal people.
Ooh.
And once people get into suicide mode or too much pharmaceutical or too much alcohol, too much drug, there's all sorts of problems. Teaching to live above the demon.
Well, today you're listening me in English. Yeah, it's the second podcast that we record in English. I'm with Jordi. You know him. I'm Rudy. And today we have a pleasure to have something that is casuality. It's not coincidence. It's something that have to be here. Ana and Jose were doing a workshop, impressive workshop, and I was crossing the area because the podcast is in a secret place in one of the yoga ones. And the second or the third time that I cross it, the girl that is managing this place starts saying, "Do you know them?" And I say, "No." And she was explaining everything. And then I said, "Can I meet them? Can I interview them?" And they said, "You have to come to my workshops." Oh my God. You know that I did so many things in my life, so many sports, many workshops, many travels. I visit all over the world, but this is completely new. For that, it's a big pleasure to have Ana and Jose here. They will explain what they do. I don't want to make any word that disturb this amazing story. Thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure to be with you in the workshop.
Thank you for that introduction.
Thank you so much.
Now we've got to live up to that introduction.
Yes?
Yeah, I think we
You
can
will
do
do
that.
it.
I think
Yeah.
we can do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
would like to add that
Yes.
Ana is one of the more important yogis alive.
Wow.
She's like really
You're trying to find the word, right?
difficult, but
Difficult.
it's really one of the biggest yoga teachers in the world.
Wow.
From the
Thank
history
you.
of yoga. Not but now, but in the history of yoga.
Wow.
I remember I went to the US in the around 2002 in a yoga conference. At that time, she was already a star of the Congress.
Wow.
But she developed a system that it's really powerful, good, and she's so consistent during many years, sharing this method, creating teacher trainings that always improving, and did so well and good for the people for the yoga scene to many people. And it's one of the teachers that even she's still traveling every year like a rock star, really sharing yoga all around the world, because she has this love to share yoga everywhere.
No, I was
We are very honored
impressed.
to have her here, but it was added, Jose. They make a connection.
A team.
They are an impressive team. When Jose, it's a great musician, and he has a long tradition working with all the philosophy of the Aborigine from Australia. So it became something extraordinary. The yoga from Anna and all the tradition from the Aboriginal, from Jose, and she, before she was also very receptive with all the these philosophies. So they create something like explosive that now they are sharing together.
Well, now this is an introduction. Now this is an introduction.
Yes.
How did you start? How do you start? How was the first moment that when you decide to do this?
Well, Anna and I, as a union, was 11 years ago. We met in an elevator.
Wow.
The owner of our yoga studio in Sydney, Body, Mind, Life, said to me that there's an American teacher called Anna Forrest coming to Sydney. And to be honest, I didn't know who Anna Forrest was. Because the only really famous yoga teachers are Bikram and Batabi Joyce and Iyengar. But when they said that she has Native American association, I said, yes, I will do this. So I created an Aboriginal ceremony for her. And later I found out it was Anna's dream to connect to the world's oldest culture. So this culture that Anna was seeking, which she got from me, was 60,000 years old.
Wow.
So before yoga, before religion, before organized communities, the Aboriginal people already had a beautiful spiritual system, philosophy, and way of life, and were already connected to the great mystery. It wasn't until the English invaded Australia and colonized the people that almost all the knowledge was lost. So my world of philosophy, shamanism, veganism, musician, composer, healer, I wanted to meet someone in the yoga industry that was open to changing the face of yoga, because from what I could see with yoga, there was my problem. It was white, middle class, and sometimes a little cheesy. And I needed a person like Anna, a truth speaker, that was willing to revolutionize yoga. And in the last 11 years, that's exactly what Anna and I have done. There's nothing in the whole planet of yoga anywhere near what Anna and I are doing at the moment, because yoga is not enough. There needs to be yoga, there needs to be diet. You got to move the body, still the mind, nurture the spirit.
Completely lifestyle.
It's medicine lifestyle. And this is what Anna and I have created.
Wow.
So I want to add on to that beginning story there. It's like I've been doing yoga since 1973, and I started teaching full-time in 1975. And then when Jose and I met in 2014, on the small paradigm level, we met in an elevator. On the bigger paradigm level, we met a few months earlier when I was sitting and doing prayers with my medicine pipe, because I'm a pipe carrier. And that's part of my responsibility as a healer and medicine person, is taking care of the people that I work with in the yoga way. And I was sitting in the mountains in California and doing prayers about this up-and-coming first trip to Australia, because I've been dreaming about going to Uluru, which at that time I knew it as Ayers Rock, which is a big red rock in the middle of the desert. I've been dreaming about that rock my whole life, and I didn't even know where it was until maybe 10 years before I came to Australia. And so I sat down with my pipe and I was doing my prayers, and I asked for 3 things. So it was a little different than a dream. It was prayers I was sending out there to the sacred ones. I asked to connect in a ceremonial way with the Aboriginal people when I went to Australia, even knowing that it's hard to connect to them and find them in the city. It's like, it's not easy. The second thing was to be able to make a pilgrimage out to Uluru, because I needed to put my hands on that rock.
Wow.
And then the third thing, it was like, it was almost like, oh my God, I can't even ask for this, but I have to. And I was just like, sacred ones, I need to find my twin flame, my life partner,
Wow.
my beloved for life. And then I listed all these things. He has to have his own spiritual connection. He has to have respect for the indigenous people. He has to appreciate and respect the work that I do in the world as a yoga teacher and as a healer. And I listed a bunch of things, and it was just like, well, here's the list.
Wow.
So at the end of that ceremony, two very interesting things happened. First, a coyote started howling. I was like, okay, coyote hears me. Great. And then I heard a train whistle. And the place that I was sitting at in these California hills, I had been there many, many, many times because my friend lived there. I'd never heard a train out of 25 years at that spot. I was like, train, okay, I'm going to have to think about what that means in a medicine way. So then fast forward to, that was in January, I think. In February, I went to Australia, and Jose and I had this very funny meeting in the elevator.
That was very funny.
The door was closing, and he dashed in, and then he said, are you on a Forrest? And I just looked at him, and was like,
What the hell?
I said, sometimes. And I said, who are you? And then the door opened, and, now that I know this about Jose, he made a grand exit, and said, you'll find out.
You'll find out. She didn't know I was going to do a ceremony. It was a big, big secret.
Wow.
But it was the first time she'd seen an Aboriginal performance, and these performances it's not just a show. It's like a spiritual awakening. And there were 70 yoga teachers from all over Australia at that ceremony, and people were weeping and crying because this is how powerful this show is. And I had an Aboriginal company called Descendants Aboriginal Dance Company. And the website is still going, and we toured over 50 countries, Olympic Games, World Cup soccer, the biggest festivals in the world. We manifested all this. And we were very professional. Our audio was professional. Our technical was professional. I was an artistic director, so I put together every minute. So when I came to Forrest Yoga, I wanted to direct the workshops and teacher trainings like a movie, and professional audio and professional everything, because coming from the entertainment business, I noticed that the yoga business was amateur. Like amateur in presentation and delivery. So, like I said, we constructed these workshops, teacher trainings online like a movie, a beginning, a midpoint, an end, 4 cameras.
That's what I experienced.
And we're constantly rewriting them and improving them. And before every workshop, we do them ourselves. So we test drive it, but also so it's living in us when we teach it. But I want to go back to that first night because there's a couple more pieces that are...
Wow.
You can't say too much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
So I was about to start my book reading. That's what I was there to do, was reading some passages out of Fierce Medicine, which was the book I wrote about a part of my life story. And the owner, Phil, came over and says, wait, we have a dance for you. And it's like, a dance? But like a warm-up band, I'm on a schedule, man. And it's like, yeah, okay. So I pulled over to the wall, not knowing what he was talking about, but, he owned the place, and I needed to make good relations and not just...
Be polite.
Yeah. Polite, I'm not so good at, but good relations, I'm good at. So then, as I'm waiting, I hear this really strange noise, sort of like an elephant or something in the hallway, and then clacking. And all of a sudden, these members of Descendants come in, and the guy from the elevator come in.
No
There's a man.
Yeah.
There's a man.
And her
playing.
assistants are going, oh, there's that rude man.
Yeah.
Because the first meeting was not pleasant. Like, it was like, fuck you, something like this. But anyway, the rude man from the elevator's back.
So they came in and they were all painted in ochre, you know, like for ceremony,
Nice.
and playing a didgeridoo, which is actually not its real name. Yiggy Yiggy is one of the real names, and clapping sticks, making all this noise. And I was just stunned because it was like I said, oh my fucking gods, sacred ones, this was my pipe ceremony.
Yeah.
And I could hear them laughing because that's the kind of relationship I have with them. It's a real relationship, not an imaginary one. And they were laughing and I didn't know why they were laughing. And why they were laughing is because everything I asked for had just walked into the room.
And we did the spiritual baptism dance and the good spirit dance, just two dances, and the whole audience was weeping, crying. We just turned the atmosphere like that. Soon as the didgeridoo begins and the paint is on, you go to another world. And then I've been touring the world with Anna. We've done over 30 countries together as yoga teachers. Wow. And I'm still, as a matter of fact, I've booked out next year. I'm booking out 2026. So I put together the tours the same way we toured with Aboriginal group in over 50 countries. Now that we're co-teachers, we manage our energy very, very carefully. Because when I first met Anna, she was hospitalized a number of times because of the schedule. And a lot of teachers, famous teachers lately that are now over 50, have been feeling the same way because they're on their own. So I created something, a dual collaboration here. And this way we'll get another 10, 15 years, no problems, managing our yoga workshops this way. We fly together, we eat together, and we do everything correctly now, including very strict vegan diet that both of us have.
Including doing our yoga practice no matter what. No matter what. It's like nobody gets to have that time from us. That's our time. Nice. And that's really important because, as you probably have found, is like the busier you get, the more
involving
you get with people. They want your time and they want your attention. And yoga teachers do this terrible mistake of sacrificing their yoga time for their students. Their students will always have the problems they have, but if the teacher is not full of life force from their yoga practice, they will not be competent to be able to help their students.
But it's also yoga owners as well.
Yes.
As Geordie will know, like owning so many studios and that, do you always make time for a practice no matter what, or unless you're injured, of course, like you are right now?
Yes. I practice. I used to get up around 4, sometimes at 2 if I want to study.
Whoa.
You don't know that?
No.
Oh, there you go. Secrets of Geordie.
Because he's sending messages at 11, so you don't sleep too much, right?
Only sometimes. I write you at 11. Sometimes happen some things late night, but I still focus on the 4 o'clock. But at the beginning, when we start to have collaboration, I was sending you in the morning for...
Yes.
But I decided to let you rest and get up.
No, I was talking about 11 in the night. Sometimes you write very...
Sometimes, yeah.
Then you say, you don't sleep. It's like in 3 hours you will wake up.
Very unusual. This happens sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I practice every morning. Happen anything. If I am injured, everything, I get up early in the morning and I do my internal practice, my practice. Today I practice. I wanted to do a practice with them today, but the job was crazy. And I can tell you, sometimes yoga teachers, international yoga teachers, very known, come here and I can see their practice, and not everybody's disciplined. So sometimes they relax, but they are absolutely strict with
Yeah.
they practice, and this is what makes the power to after share.
Well, it's also like we take it very seriously to take responsibility for our life force, our luminosity, and it's our job to build it every day. Every day.
Yes.
And I think also what's important is like, some people hear like, oh, you've been teaching yoga since 1974, you know, and then full time since 75. Aren't you sick of it? It's like, no, because I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly delving into the unknown. I'm very curious. Jose has a great saying that I really love, which is like being spiritual detectives, always looking for new clues and putting the big puzzle of the great mystery together. And so we do that now together, and it's fantastic, and it helps inspire us in our work instead of like, oh, if I have to tell another person to inhale, I'm just going to quit.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, who needs that kind of crap attitude? You know,
Yeah.
don't, if you're going to be a teacher, you will repeat yourself. It's just the nature of teaching.
Yeah. And this Forrest Yoga now, it keeps evolving. Every year we get better. We're much better this year than we were last year when we were in Barcelona.
Just like you saw, Jordy, you saw
we
that.
Keep getting better and better. And each year we make it a deeper spiritual significance. It's not an exercise class, but a lot of people only serve the body. Most yoga teachers that we see are only serving the body. If you only serve the body, eventually you lose the mind. So, as I was saying before, you've got to move the body, still the mind, express the emotions, and nurture the spirit, because humans are four: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So Anna and I understand this. So we're developing stuff that has the whole spectrum, like we have meditation piano, we have beautiful philosophy, we have some dance, we have all sorts of things so people can celebrate the joy of living. And that's what we're about.
And we also have ceremonies designed to help people start to track their thinking, the thinking that degrades them or disconnects them from their spirit, and to be strong enough to make that warrior's choice of, I choose connecting to my spirit and then living my life as my spirit dictates, not as my neurosis dictates. That's a big discernment, to choose between those two. You know, we let our fears run us, we let our crazy person inside run us, and it's like, this is the wrong person driving your life. You need to connect to your spirit, build that relationship, and then have your spirit guide you as to how to live your life in a way that is most fulfilling and most... When you develop your gifts, then there's this urge, this need to offer them to the people. And that's where I feel it's like we're coming into alignment with our purpose, is to quest for, discover, and then develop your gifts, and to quest for, why have you incarnated at this time in this very tumultuous time of humanity? Yeah. And it could be because there's some peace that is uniquely yours that you have to offer in this world. And so that is what we help people get to. We don't tell them what it is. We don't know. It's their quest. We put people on their own hero's quest so they can find out what truly matters to them. And in the process, work their healing, whether it's a back injury, a hip injury, or a broken heart, or crazy parents, or whatever it is. There's a way of working in the way that we're guiding people on the mat to begin to free up from these twists and contortions of their life experiences, to unwind that and then be more responsible for how they want to live their life in a good medicine way.
Yeah. One thing we're teaching is teaching people to live above their demons. Now, this is what the shamans do. We live above the demons. Now, a yoga teacher these days is a yoga teacher, an exercise teacher, a friend, a doctor. You know, people come to us with all problems. Some are very serious.
Holistic.
Many suicidal people.
Ooh.
And once people get into suicide mode, or too much pharmaceutical, or too much alcohol, too much drug, there's all sorts of problems. Teaching to live above the demon, and also to recognize that the enemies that we think are out there, really the real enemy is here.
Yes.
There is enemies out there too. We all have enemies, but those enemies there are just a trigger. They're a trigger to wake us up, because when we're fighting with someone, we usually wake up a little bit more. We're alert and present during this. So, you know, as I said, yoga's not enough. We also got to get them onto a diet. We also got to get them spending some time with a program of insight, like either music, acting, singing, reading, or writing, something else. So that's why I say that the physical yoga practice ain't enough. It has to be a system that takes care of all four components: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. So that's what Anna and I are working on.
So when you start to explore what is your personal program of insight, then these are ways of unfolding different aspects of your spirit, which is really exciting. And sometimes people, they go into this fog, like, oh, I don't know what to do. It's like, all right, let's start with food. Krishnamacharya said food is the first yoga. Food. Because we do it every day, right? Every single day we eat, sometimes 3 times a day, depending on the person. And if you are putting crap into your body, then you are getting a crappy internal response. And you can't think clearly. You can't have clear emotional response to your world, because your body is dealing with the fact that you just poisoned it. So one of the facts that we start with is stop poisoning yourself. Stop it. You don't know the difference between a Big Mac and a piece of broccoli? Of course you do. You don't know the difference between drinking alcohol or drinking water? Of course you do.
Yeah.
Start with what you can discern right away, and we'll help you continue to expand your perceptions.
One of the first things I did when I became co-director of Forrest Yoga is I turned Forrest Yoga into a vegan-friendly company. Shiva Ray was also vegetarian, Sean Korn. So some of the leading world yoga teachers were already vegans or vegetarians.
Sharon Gannon and David Life are vegans.
And the guy from New York, Dharma Mitri, we love that. Also vegan or vegetarian, I'm not sure. So that was very important, because I've always been an animal rights person, because in Australia, they've killed over 100 million kangaroos. 100 million, which is the biggest slaughter of animals. So not just kangaroos, koalas, all our animals have starting to disappear and become extinct because of deforestation and all sorts of other problems. So we thought we would create a non-violent ahimsa, a non-violent yoga system. But violence is also eating tortured animals. And when you take in a violated, tortured animal on your dinner plate, you get that energy back in your body. Anna's been vegan now for over 10 years, and she has the energy of 5 women now. And of course, now that she's not taking any of that, and of course, now that she's not taking any of that bad energy, because people don't realize that 99% of all meat comes from factory farming. And if you don't know what a factory farm is, look it up. It is the most hideous, repulsive, and revolting. It's a holocaust of animals. And you are taking that disgusting energy into your body.
There is states of consciousness that you cannot get to if you really don't take care of your food.
Yeah.
And if you are really
This is sure.
compromised to realize yourself, you need to clean your. I was I wanted to ask how yoga changed your life and how yoga is changing the life of your disciples.
And how yoga is doing what?
Is you see changing
Other
the
lives.
of your disciples
Uh-huh.
through
Okay.
the practice of yoga?
You want to go first on that?
No, you go first. She's been going longer than me.
That's true.
She's been going 45 years.
You have a shorter story on that. Okay. When I started yoga as a teenager, I was an alcoholic. I was doing any drugs I could grab. I smoked heavily all day, half the night.
Wow.
I slept once or twice a week. I was very driven and also suicidal. I was a mess. And when I started yoga, it was a very funny beginning because this girl that I knew at school, but was not a friend, just someone that walked by me on the hall, said, I have something you can't do. And I looked at her like, what an odd thing to say. I don't barely even know you. And I took out my cigarettes and I tapped it down and I lit it with my best tough girl act. And I just said, that's impossible. And she brought me to a yoga class and she was absolutely right. I couldn't do much of anything. I mean, the hardest pose, well, there's three really poses that really stood out in my mind. It was like, there's all these older people, like old women of at least 30 years old. I was a teenager, remember
Yes.
that? They could reach forward and grab their toes in a forward bend. I was stunned by that because I couldn't even get to my knees. I was training horses for years, so my back and the backs of my legs were very tight. And then they would do bow pose. They'd reach back and grab their ankles, and my mind couldn't even absorb that pose. And then the weirdest, most intense pose was at the end of the class, everyone laid down for Shavasana. And I just thought, are you kidding me? You want me to lay down in a group of people and relax? And I can't do that. I couldn't lay down. I couldn't trust enough to actually close my eyes when there's other people in the room. So that was an extremely challenging time that I had. And yet something hooked me. And even though I was still doing a lot of my destructive behavior, there was something that was creeping in. So when I look at it from more of a medicine perspective now, like a shamanic perspective, that was the Sacred One's intervention to take me off of this suicide track and put me onto a different track. And I call it choosing life. To choose life over and over and over. Each time you have the chance to sit down and have a meal, you choose life. You choose the vitality in the food, not something that is just feeding your addictions. Part of choosing life for me was to get off my addictions. So yoga saved my life many times over. And in that process, I also became a vegetarian in 1975. But I was having tremendous problems. And what I didn't know is most of the vegetarian food that I was eating, like rice and lentils and beans and stuff like that, I'm allergic to.
Oh.
And it took me years to work that out. And at a certain point, I just couldn't do it anymore because it was like every time I ate, it hurt. Like really bad pain. Now I'd get headaches and my joints would hurt. And I was thinking for a long time, it's like, you're just detoxing. Because I quit smoking, I quit drinking, I changed my diet all on the same day.
Wow.
So it's like October 3rd, 1975, boom.
All in.
Bloom. Yes, because I'm an intense person and I do things in an intensity way. And I was always thinking, I'm detoxing. And then this is the way I talk to myself. It's like, enough of the fucking detoxing. Something is wrong. And I started finding out what was wrong. And it took me many years of exploration to realize what I was allergic to. And at a certain point, I gave up because I could only focus on myself so much because I didn't have a lot of care for myself. So eventually that became... Yeah, well, eventually I could grow the amount I could care for myself and therefore do the spiritual detection of what works here. Because that's also one of the bottom lines of Forrest Yoga is like, what works, what doesn't. Plain and simple. So in having to go through that whole addictive thing, and then after I gave up the alcohol and then all that stuff, then I went into being bulimic. I went back to eating meat because I was like eating that was the only thing I found I could eat was meat and like a vegetable. That was about it. I couldn't eat fruit. Then I came up with a thyroid disease and epilepsy and all sorts of really intense problems that I had to overcome. You know, I tried to go to the American form of medicine and that just didn't work for me. It was like drugs or surgery. It's like, no, thank you. No, thank you. There's got to be a different way. I'm going to make a different pathway. So in my healing process, I started getting answers and then would feed that back to my students that had some of the same problems, like people with addictions, people with sexual abuse, people with head injuries.
Because you pass through all that, you can
yes.
help others.
Yeah.
Yes. So the dreadful experiences I had, I basically, this is another one of the premises of Forrest Yoga, I turned that shit to fertilizer and learned how to use it in a good way for my students, but also for myself. And then I moved out to a reservation and lived in the wilderness for a number of years, and I would hunt for my food. So when Jose and I met, I was a hunter. So hunter meets peaceful warrior vegan.
Vegan.
And it's like, wow, we have some things to work out here. You know, and Jose started to talk to me a little bit about it. And it's just like, I don't even want to hear it, man. And then I realized like I'm being exceptionally rigid and I've been focused on my own healing for so long. Maybe I can focus on what can I do in a different way that will help the earth because I see these problems. And I need to backtrack way far back to when I first started when I left training horses, which I love. To the degree that I knew how to love, I loved doing that. And I trained other animals, cats, dogs, snakes, birds, you name it, I could train it. And I realized like the animals that I would usually get were the ones that were injured or insane. And what would make them injured or insane was the humans. And I realized like I could be an animal trainer and healer and even a vet. I was like assisting vets whenever they would come work with the animals. And I wouldn't be dealing with the core problem. The core problem is the humans. And what I felt compelled and really drawn to do was teach yoga because it was making such a difference in my life. And so that's what made me go into my first teacher training course and stop the addictions, like being brave enough to find out what's life about without all this. But it took me going into the medicine ways, the Native American indigenous ways, to connect to my spirit. The yoga was not able to bring me there on its own. And so as I began to explore what this was and realize the attitudes that I held very close and tight, like my hatred and resentment, and I had to let those go in order to make this connection. I had to make connecting to my spirit more important than my hatred and hurt and all those things. So this is also where I began to merge ceremony into yoga, in Forrest Yoga. And then when Jose and I met, he had this very deep, wide range, mountain ranges full of his shamanic music healing and all these different things that he knew that I did not know. And so it became just this exquisite marriage of what we did, of our work in the world, as well as our personal marriage.
Yeah. So my idea was, I think the question that Jordi asked was, how has yoga helped our students? Vastly, it's helped our students. But my intention was to change yoga, not the yoga students first. So my first intention was to revolutionize yoga because I came from an indigenous background of 25 years. Now, there's something really deep and real about indigenous cultures before colonization, because once colonization happened, indigenous people got on drink, drugs, and the whole 90% of our people were killed. So this is what colonization did. And even today, the vast majority of Aboriginal people die in their mid-40s.
Wow.
So this is the aftermath of colonization. But before colonization, there was something real about indigenous culture, Native American, Aboriginal, Maori, there was something deep and real that yoga didn't have. And maybe the original yoga did, but certainly not the American version of yoga that we get today. So to bring this deep truth and understanding into the yoga class, all the things that I could do to revolutionize yoga, the shamanism, the veganism, the music healing, the dancing, there was just so many aspects. And as Anna said, yoga was not enough to make the spiritual connection. If you just want an exercise class, sure. But people are coming to yoga not for an exercise class, although when I was with Bikram, yes, we were coming to yoga just for an exercise class and to have a sweat. But at some stage, people are coming to yoga to make a connection and to try to find happiness in a very, very cruel world. And I think Anna and I are really getting there. But just back on Anna's veganism, like when I met Anna, her diet was one-dimensional. It was just meat, veg, meat, veg, meat, veg, meat, veg. Now, that sort of diet, you can't live like that. So Anna was hospitalized a number of times. She was getting chronic headaches, and she wasn't, I would say, like a totally happy person either. But after a year or so together, all of a sudden her diet went like this, like this, like this, like this, and then all of a sudden she was eating from the full spectrum of fruit and vegetables. Now, why that's important is because the second brain is in the stomach, and the second brain has 39 trillion microbes. Now, what the microbes want to eat is vegetables and fruit and not processed foods. So this is what wakes up the 39 trillion microbes. Now, a happy stomach is a happy human because the stomach and brain are connected. There's something called the vagus nerve, so the brain and stomach is in constant connection. Now, most yogis are depressed people. People think that or your yoga students are happy and all that. It's not necessarily true. Most yoga people I've met are fighting huge demons and huge personal battles. Now, food is just one part of it, but it is a big part. And feeding your stomach the organic fruit and vegetables, they say to eat over 30 plants a week, different plants. Then what happens is the microbes begin, it's like a planet.
Yes.
There's India here, there's US here, and all of a sudden the microbes are rejoicing and the brain and stomach is being connected, and a happy stomach is a happy human. So this is the last 10 years of research into the microbiome, it's called. Anyone who wants to look it up, microbiome, it's new research. And in Forrest Yoga, we do abdominals at the beginning of the class to turn on the microbes. The microbes want fresh fruit and vegetables. Okay. They want exercise, core exercise. They want sleep. They want sunshine. They want music. They're just like each 39 trillion is like a person. I want happiness.
Yes. And the science approved this because now they discovered that 80 or they don't know exactly, but 80 or 90% of the serotonin that we produce is from the the bacteria that we have.
The gut bacteria.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're just learning about this now, that if you keep that happy, your will be
brain,
happy, or will help you be happier.
Yeah, I know a lot of nutrition that said changing the food, change the person.
And here's the thing.
Completely, from the depression to happiness, just changing the food.
And here's the bad thing about mainstream medicine. Pharmaceuticals, radiation therapy, and everything kill the microbiome. So billions and billions of microbes are killed every time we have pharmaceutical drugs. So we're learning this now too, but of course this will be a secret because the pharmaceutical business thrives on sickness. Hospitals thrive on sickness. It's a big business.
Exactly.
It's a big business.
The biggest one.
You don't want people to have this information. You want the hospital beds at 100% every month, not 50%, 100%.
Well, that's what they want. That's not what we want.
That's not what we want.
So I'm going to backtrack a little bit on that. It's like when Jose and I were talking and he was showing me some different films to give me more information. And I had to really take this rigid thing, like I've already experimented with this, there was that, I had to take my rigid beliefs and put them aside. It was like, don't tell me what to do. And that was my attitude. And he didn't. He just said, here's some other information. And so at a certain point, it was like, I will risk doing this because I still believe it won't work for me.